I turned to crystal meth in my 40s, a little bit of a late bloomer. And I had this sort of superiority complex, but at least I wasn't an alcoholic. And for a while, I was a functioning addict. I was actually an addictions counselor. So I thought I was immune to addiction. And I really came to learn that addiction doesn't discriminate at all. And I was in a really toxic, abusive relationship. My eating was out of control. I was gaining weight. I had a girlfriend that said, "Oh, try crystal meth and you'll lose weight and you'll feel great and you'll have all this energy." And I truly did lose a lot of weight rapidly, but I certainly didn't feel great. And it was really just a matter of months that I lost my career, I lost my home, I lost my daughter, I lost my mind, my dignity, everything. And I found myself homeless and living on the street.
This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. I'm your host, Sean Dustin. If this is your first time stopping by, hey, what's up? Welcome. This is a podcast about bottoms and life struggles and how my guests get through them. And in between that is a little bit of variety, mostly things that interest me. And if you're returning, thank you. Welcome back. I'm glad you're deciding to spend your time with me. Not a whole lot to update this one. I've been pushing episodes, in the last 2 weeks. This is probably the fourth one. This is episode 19. We've got 7 more to go. Let's see if I can get to at least 4 or 5 more of those before the end of the month. If I stay laid off, then it's a good chance that I might be doing that because this is giving me something to do and staying out of trouble. This episode, we have Satya. She is from British Columbia, Canada. She's a recovering addict. Her drug of choice was methamphetamine, which was also mine. Satya is a holistic recovery coach and a harm reduction advocate. She's also the founder of the North Star Recovery Group on Facebook. And all her places, as usual, will be in the show notes. And like I said in the last episode, briefing for this guest, which is Satya, the before and after picture is really what got me to want to connect with her. You'll see that in the show notes as well, and you'll probably see that in the thumbnail. So instead of my, because I've been making up, I could have been doing this the whole time, but I didn't understand how my podcast host worked. And as I've been messing around with things, I'm seeing the potential of what I could be doing. And I could have been doing it the whole time, but I just didn't know because I've been building up. Like if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see my promo clips, and I have to build the artwork on there. And so I could have actually been inserting those into thumbnails per episode the whole time. I just didn't realize it until just recently. So this will be the first episode that I try and do that. So hopefully it will help, boost my listenership. And as always, if, you're getting something out of this, do me a favor, refer a friend, let somebody know about it. It's how we kind of build these things. I mean, I promote on social media, but word of mouth actually is the best promotion that you can get because if you tell somebody about it, they're more than likely going to go and check it out themselves. And, that's just kind of how you build communities. Also, rate, review if you want on iTunes. That's where I check most of the stuff. I'm sure you can rate and review on any of the podcast platforms that you're on, but iTunes is the one that I usually check out. And the only other thing that I have is the jiu-jitsu deal. Still going. Man, I posted something on Instagram last night. It was 1 hour. I was exhausted, and you could see it in the picture. I took a picture of myself. I was literally exhausted, drenched with sweat. One of the main reasons why I decided I wanted to try jiu-jitsu is, one, Rogan, I listen to him. He's always talking about it. Another reason too is that my mind never shuts up. It's constantly going. There's just chatter all the time in there. I needed something that was going to tire me out to the point where it just shuts that up. And this did it. I was too exhausted to think about anything other than I just want to go home. I want to grab something to eat and I want to jump in bed, lay down and go to sleep. So mission accomplished. Anyways, that's about all I have. Let's get to Satya. Hi, Satya. How are you?
Good. How are you, Sean?
Good. Thank you. Whereabouts are you located? Oh, you're welcome. Whereabouts are you located?
I'm located in northern BC in Canada.
Ah, Canada. Beautiful country up there.
Yeah, it's where the wild things live.
Great. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners and give a brief introduction, who you are, what you do, and how you came upon wanting to do a interview on my podcast.
Okay. Well, my name is Satya. I'm a drug addict. I've just passed the 3.5-year clean mark, claiming victory every day by day. What I do now is I'm a holistic recovery coach and a women's empowerment coach. So I help people that are recovering from addiction and trauma, grief and loss. The techniques and the practices I use to help people recover are the same things that helped me to recover from my addiction. I found in my recovery journey that it wasn't just one size fits all when it comes to recovery, because every person is so individual and unique. Even though we might have all the same behaviors, the reasons that we come to addiction in our lives are unique, and the way that we recover is unique. So I was really happy to find what worked for me, and I'm just honored to be able to help people on their recovery journeys as well. And I came to your podcast because I made friends with you in a recovery group when I was sharing the story of my recovery. So I'm really happy to be here, and I really love the way that you're giving back to the people that are in recovery. So thank you for your service.
You're welcome, and thank you as well. It's an important journey that we're both on, and it's definitely a needed thing out there in the world today. There's a lot of dysfunction, a lot of chaos out there, and there's a lot of people struggling and not knowing how to get help, not know where to look for help. And stigma too, and I think we're getting past a lot of that. The more these podcasts come out, different platforms, the groups, everything that's coming together in society right now with social media and just, getting away from mainstream media altogether, we're able to shed a lot more light on some of these subjects and some of these issues and able to make a bigger difference.
Mm-hmm. And I really feel such a sense of urgency for people in recovery to give back to those still suffering, especially now with the opioid crisis. And so many of our people are dying, and it's just an absolute tragedy what's happening out there. And, so many people don't get a second chance. So I just think, now more than ever, that we need more and more recovery warriors, offering a hand and helping people to come to the light. So.
Well, that's great. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and, what it was like for you, what happened, and what brought you to where you are now?
Okay. I always kind of laugh to myself when people ask me how long I was an addict, because I really can trace the roots of addiction right back to my early childhood. I started really just trying to numb out the painful experience of my childhood through things like eating disorders and self-harming. And then as I grew into a teenager, it was toxic relationships. And there was always something. I always found something to numb out the fear and the pain that I was feeling. And so I didn't actually start drugs. I was raised in an very violent alcoholic home as a child. So I was adamant that I would never drink, but I turned to crystal meth in my 40s, a little bit of a late bloomer. And I had this sort of superiority complex that at least I wasn't an alcoholic. And for a while I was a functioning addict. I was actually an addictions counselor, so I thought I was immune to addiction, and I really came to learn that addiction doesn't discriminate at all. And I was in a really toxic, abusive relationship. My eating was out of control. I was gaining weight. I had a girlfriend that said, "Oh, try crystal meth and you'll lose weight and you'll feel great and you'll have all this energy." And I truly did lose a lot of weight rapidly, but I certainly didn't feel great. And it was really just a matter of months that I lost my career, I lost my home, I lost my daughter, I lost my mind, my dignity, everything. And I found myself homeless and living on the street. And so rock bottom came really quickly and really hard for me. And it's not like camping out there. I don't know. I had this idea that I could just, it wasn't a big deal as long as I could stay high, that it wasn't that big of a deal. It was the demon of denial that kept telling me it's not that bad. In the beginning, I was allowed to still visit with my daughter. She was placed into care. But then after a while, I was so crazy, so deeply in psychosis, and my appearance was so shocking. I was just a skinny little thing covered in sores. So I wasn't allowed to see her anymore because it was just too terrifying for her to see me in that state. But I could still talk to her on the phone. And I was talking to her one night, and I was telling her the same thing. I always told her, I'm going to get help. I'm going to get my act together. I'm going to get us a house. I'm going to get you back. And that particular night, she said, "You know what, Mom? I've already accepted you're not coming back to me. It's okay." And that really, for me, was the turning point. That was the rock bottom of my rock bottom, because it actually sparked in me this sort of flame that, you know what, I am not going to let her accept that. And that is not what my daughter is going to be left, with, is this acceptance that I'm never coming back to her. So that really, after that, I started going to NA meetings, and I was really so messed up and still using. And I'm so grateful for the people in the rooms that still welcomed me in, even though I couldn't share, I couldn't talk, I couldn't even sit in the circle. I could just sit on the floor outside the circle, holding onto my bicycle and watching the door, because I was just so paranoid. But that's where the seeds were planted. When people started to show that they actually cared, and kept telling me, keep coming back. And that was an amazing thing, because it was so shocking for me to be on the street and to, go into a hotel lobby or something to use the bathroom where I had stayed as a guest before, and to be kicked out. It was so devastating for me to be treated like street people are treated. And that really helped me to want to heal and to want to do better, because I was also so moved by the injustice of how people are treated. It just gave me a real insight into, I guess I had always thought that people could just get their act together, and it was sort of a moral failing, and they didn't have enough willpower to, go get a job and stop doing drugs, until I was in that position. And I realized it takes a lot more than a job and a lot more than willpower to be able to pull yourself out of that hell, and that you can't do it alone. I am so grateful that I had those experiences, and to be able to really understand addiction from the other side, and not just sort of in my holier than thou position. So God really did have a plan for me to lead me to that understanding. So I started going to NA. Get back to my story. I started looking for a treatment center that would take me. And that was another shocking experience, because I just had this idea when I finally asked for help that help would be available to me. I didn't realize what a dire shortage of treatment facilities there actually are in all of North America. I'm in Canada, but there's a very dire shortage of treatment facilities and mental health facilities. So I just kept phoning places and begging for a bed. And 3 times I was actually given a bed, and I would get into the centers and then I would run away again. So I just kept having to try and try and try. I think it was on my 3rd time I finally found a center that took me, that it wasn't residential. It was kind of like school. I could just go every day and then go to a safe house in the night. And for me, that worked, because I didn't feel like I was being confined. I don't know, but that was really important to me that I could participate at my own free will. So that really helped me. And during that time, I was also introduced to Kundalini yoga and meditation. And I really found my center and my safety and was able to really deal with the root of my problem, because I found when I stopped doing the drugs, I realized that my problem actually wasn't the drugs. My problem came before the drugs. So, and it was my trauma that was unresolved, and the drugs were just a way for me to cover up that pain without having to resolve it or to heal it. So doing yoga and meditation really brought me back into my body and really helped me to start to resolve this trauma. At the same time, I was going to treatment and learning skills to deal with the cravings and to be able to, build a supportive community and just find myself again. So I made my recovery my full-time job, and it took about 7 months after I came out of treatment, and I tried so many kinds of therapy after that, horse therapy, art therapy, nature therapy, just everything I could resource. I just became like a sponge, just all these healing modalities. And after about 7 months, I got my daughter back. And so that was a real victory, because I remember so many times people telling me, you're never going to get better. You're not going to get your daughter back. And that was really actually big fuel, to help me heal, because I was always a little bit of a rebel that way. So if somebody told me I couldn't do something, I would definitely do the opposite. Yeah, I got my daughter back, and then I started giving back and helping other people who are still suffering in their addictions. And today that's what keeps me strong in my recovery, is being able to offer a hand to people in the street and say, hey, you're not too far gone. You can heal. You can recover. You're worth it. You're loved. That's really my message to people who are still struggling.
Wow, that's amazing. That's an amazing. I mean, it's amazing that you started so late. My drug of choice was methamphetamine as well. Well, I mean, it was everything, but the one that kind of took me down was meth. It's a horrible, horrible drug, and it ruins lives, and it makes people think that, I don't know what it makes you think, but there's no good idea that happens when you haven't slept for 3 days.
No, that's for sure. And it's so powerful. Hey, it's a really gripping. I don't even call it a drug. It's just pure poison. Yeah, my heart really goes out to people that are addicted to it, and it's everywhere, right?
Yeah. I have a couple of questions that came from what you were talking about. One of them is, how long did it take from your slide to your bottom, like time-wise?
It was literally months. From the first time I tried, I knew the very first time I smoked crystal meth, I was fucked. Fucked for my language. But I knew that very first time I was addicted. I knew that was it. And it was about 3 months until I was homeless and on the street. It was fast.
Wow. Yeah, that is fast.
Yeah. I couldn't get enough of it. I couldn't put my pipe down. It was really bad.
Yeah, I smoked as well, and I didn't like doing lines. It hurt too much. I was definitely not going to slam it because I was better than that. I'm not.
Same. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, I would never do that. Those people have real problems.
Those are junkies.
Exactly. Little did I know as I'm, hadn't slept for 5 days, looking in the mirror, thinking that I'm sexy as hell, all sucked up and hadn't showered in 3 days, hair greasy, not even, it's so, I have very clear pictures in my head of, what I'm talking about. And it's so disgusting.
Yeah. And, now I do some street outreach now. And when I see people that are, hallucinating and seeing these shadow people and stuff, I just empathize so much, because those are real to them. I've seen them too, and there's nothing more terrifying. It's just horrendous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a good thing.
No.
Whoever invented that stuff. I don't know if it was the Nazis for war, or I know that some in the U.S. they use that too to keep the soldiers awake and eating less as well. So I mean, it was.
I think it was invented in the war to keep the soldiers awake. I think it was World War II. Yeah.
Yeah, bad stuff.
Yeah.
So how long did it take for your brain to sort of, your brain, your chemistry, everything to sort of normalize after you stopped using? For me, it was about 2 years before I started to feel normal again, where like my emotions weren't all out of whack and, kind of like crying for no reason at different times, and just watching certain things would spark certain emotions. It was just kind of all over the board there.
Mm-hmm. Well, truthfully, I don't think I'll ever be normal again. No, but quite honestly, I did suffer some brain damage that I don't know if it will ever resolve. I used to be able to speak a lot more clearly and eloquently, and now I stumble on words and I'll have sort of like little gaps when I'm talking. That's why I say too much. That was never a problem for me before I did the drugs. So I do believe that there's, long-lasting damage that I'll probably always have to live with. And I know my paranoia and my false ideas of, these conspiracy theories I had that everyone was out to get me and following me and stuff. That took a good 2 years for it to go away, and the panic attack. And I really feel like I healed quickly too, even though it took a good 2 years to start feeling normal. And I really think the meditation and the yoga helped that a lot. But yeah, in the first year, I kept thinking, like, what's the point of even quitting? Because I'm still crazy. I still fly into rages. Like, I felt like I had absolutely no control, like you're saying, over my emotional state. And maybe it's because I was numb for so long, but I really think that's something that's common for people that are recovering from meth is having to struggle with that ability to regulate their emotions again, and their and keep their thinking in reality. It's really a struggle. Yeah. And then the depression was horrible too, right? Because your brain stops making the dopamine because it becomes so dependent on the crystal meth for that dopamine that physiologically your body stops producing it. I forget, but I think it's within 72 hours of quitting crystal meth, there's an enormous risk for suicide because those levels of dopamine drop so drastically that people often do suicide when they're first coming off of it. So yeah, I really encourage people, if they are coming off of it, to get as much support as they can and to really be in a safe space and be patient with themselves, because it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, that's for sure.
And so you've been clean now for 3 years, you said?
3.5. Yeah, just past my 3.5 mark.
Okay. Yeah, it does get better. I mean, for me, it's been about 9 years now. And
oh, wow. Good for you.
Yeah. So, well, and it's, I still sometimes I do the same thing. I feel like my words come together a lot better, and my thoughts are very, precise in my head, but coming out, sometimes it's, I just like this, you know what I mean? Good.
Yeah.
Great thing for editing. I can get rid of all that, but it still happens when I'm in conversations sometimes.
And isn't that funny? Because when I was on the drug, I would talk like an auctioneer. Like, I could just, blah, 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 and never stumble over a word. But yeah, funny.
Just some thoughts started coming back to me about times when I was in that cycle. So here's one thing that I had to stop doing in the beginning. I couldn't listen to music anymore because it would trigger thoughts and memories from my using times. Like, when I would be driving my truck with the windows down and the wind blowing, middle of the night, high as hell, some songs would just trigger these memories, and they were just so powerful that I had to stop listening to music altogether and just listen to talk radio.
Yeah, I was the same. I could only listen to, mantras and relaxation music for a good year. Anything else was just so triggering. And of course, I couldn't live in the same city where I used to live. I had to make all new friends, and that's a good thing. But it was hard too. It was hard dealing with that loneliness and just, starting right from scratch.
I think that's probably the toughest part, because you said it was yoga for you that got you kind of into a new pattern, and the holistic stuff. It got you into a new pattern of thinking, a new pattern of acting, a new niche, if you want to call it that. And for myself, it was adult slow pitch softball that put me into that different area where I'm not dealing with people that were, using or, it's funny how you like to be around those people because everybody's doing the same thing. Nobody's really judging you for being a fuck up, basically.
Yeah. There's you don't have to live up to anybody's expectations.
Yeah. And for myself, I was always, I always had a little bit more than everybody else. Like I maintained, I still had a car. I still had all these things that most of them didn't. So I was like,
you were everyone's best friend.
Yeah, I was like the king of the tweakers. Yes. if that sounds cool, probably not.
Yeah.
That was another reason why I thought that I was better than everybody else. I still have a car. I still have all this stuff. These people want to hang out with me. I'm the best. It's like, God, shut up, dude. Get over yourself.
Yeah. And it's a harsh reality when you reach that point in your addiction and you realize, that you're not cool.
No, you're not cool.
It's not fun.
No, being alone is no fun. And everybody that you thought was going to be there once, when I went to prison and nobody was there. Nobody. Yeah. Just my family.
Yeah.
So I have a question that is kind of a hot topic in recovery, and it's about relapse. And whenever this gets thrown into a group discussion, people do go wild. And I don't understand it because it is very true. Yeah. Relapse is a part of recovery. It doesn't have to be for everybody, but for most, it's a process. And the process is as long as you're like, you relapse, but you want to change. And so as long as it doesn't kill you, and that's the hard part, because when it comes to relapsing with
a lot of people.
Yeah. When it comes to relapsing with other stuff like opiates and fentanyl and heroin and all of those hardcore drugs, like I don't know too many people that have OD'd on meth. Like I've come close on accident before. It didn't kill me. And I don't know if maybe it could. I don't know if you got hit a toxic level, like, a lot, it might kill you. But I mean, I think I've gotten to that point. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I am a real big advocate of harm reduction. So that being said, I really believe that it is a process, and I don't think it's helpful to people to say that relapse is not a part of recovery, because that just gives the message to the person, you relapsed, you don't want to recover bad enough, just keep going, go back out there. I really think it is a part of recovery, because we're peeling off all these layers that have kept us numb and have kept us, immune from our pain. And it takes a long time to acquire these new skills, especially if we've never had healthy role models in our lives or been able to see functioning healthy adults before. It's just like starting out as a toddler and sort of reparenting yourself. And no toddler just, stands up and starts walking and then they're just running. They fall down and they stand up, and they fall down and they stand up. And that's how they learn to walk. And I do believe it's the same way with addiction, that people, sometimes fall down, and if they're lucky enough to get a chance to stand back up again, I just really encourage them to not to dwell on that relapse, but to forgive themselves and keep moving forward. It's not all over just because, or it doesn't mean that you don't want your recovery bad enough. It's not a moral failing. It's natural,
Yeah. For me, every time that I did, the next time was a lot less of a time to stop. And
Yeah.
I found that too when it came to losing weight. That's a tough one too. You know, when you're eating sugar all the time, or you're eating stuff that isn't good for you, fast food, whatever it is. I mean, I would stumble all the time, and it would just get, you know, I would just know I'm like, and I would feel bad when I'm sitting there, you know, eating a burger from Jack in the Box, or whatever it is that I'm doing, you know, eating a pint of ice cream because it tastes good, or whatever it is. And the time in between, me not going to the gym and me staying out there and doing that, the more I fell, the less time in between now that it happens. So it's like I'm more cognizant of what's of it now. So like I'll only slide like 10 pounds now instead of 20 or 30 and then go back. If that makes any sense. And I feel like addiction, so it's all the same.
Yeah, it is all the same. It's filling that void, right?
What is that void? I mean, like I know growing up, a lot of my stuff, like I was never abused physically. I was never molested in any way. Sometimes I try to figure out why did I go down this road, not having, you know, some of those seriously traumatic events happen in my life. I mean, I know my parents were it wasn't a healthy relationship, and like I don't know how much of it I saw. I don't think I saw a whole lot of it because I can't remember it, but I mean, I must, because I played out a lot of the things that were happening in that household when I got older and started and grew up. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I must have seen something.
I think some people think because there wasn't abuse or a big traumatic experience that they can pinpoint. Trauma can also happen from feeling neglected or just feeling ignored or unimportant. That's very traumatic for a child's development too. So I think that's sometimes the case with people that can't articulate what the actual event was. Maybe it was just that they felt like they were pushed to the side, or there were other things more important. And also, I think there's just so much vicarious trauma in the society that we live in. Like, we're just inundated with images of violence and poverty, and just, you know, there's just so much chaos in the world. It's just more than, you know, a human should actually be able to bear. It's overwhelming, right? Because there's nothing an individual person can do to alleviate the world's suffering, yet we're always having to bear witness to it. So I really just feel like it wears on a person's soul, you know, it's just a lot to be human. It's hard. It's really hard. And also I do believe that the root of addiction usually is trauma, but also the drugs themselves are so physiologically addictive that even if you have a perfect, you know, happy life, people can still become addicted just from doing the drug itself, right? There doesn't, and then the trauma will come from the experience of addiction. I found that was a huge trauma for me, just realizing I couldn't stop when I wanted to stop, but I couldn't stop. And I was fully aware that I was killing myself, and I still couldn't stop. That was so traumatic for me. to feel that loss of control. So I think there's just so many reasons, and that's why there's so many paths of healing as well, because it's not just one thing.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me a little bit about your holistic healing approach.
So I use natural healing. So I really help people with their nutritional needs and using different plants and herbs to sort of rebuild the nervous system and the brain. And meditation, I help people with meditation to really be mindful and to really be present in their body and in their life, and to really be able to sit with their feelings and not have this urge every time they feel discomfort or even joy. People will run away from pleasurable experiences as well, because we just live in this world where we're always looking to fix things, right, and change things. So I just really help people to sit with themselves and be with themselves. I take people out in nature and just really help them to ground and to connect in with the natural world around them. And I find that people really start to feel like they belong when they're out in nature, and they start to calm, and they start to notice the little tiny miracles and the beauty of the world, instead of just always being caught up in, the horror of it all and the rush. So I find that all these things, what I really like to do is find some congruency with the mental, the physical, and the spiritual, because I think when it comes to healing addictions that we really have to incorporate all the realms of a person, and that's the holistic approach. It's great to learn some skills and things, but it's also really good to just be present in your body and to be able to access all the resources within yourself to invite your own healing. It kind of sounds flaky, but
no, not at all. That's actually very, very accurate. Have you ever heard of a guy named Johan Hari?
No, I haven't.
Okay, he published a couple of articles about addiction, and he liked to reference the Rat Park studies. Have you heard of those?
Yes, and the opposite of addiction is not sobriety; it's connection.
It's connection, and it's meaning, and it's meaningfulness, and it's finding meaning in your life or in around you, and it's not about shaming the addict or the individual that's suffering. It's about including them, being inclusive, being what's that? What's the word I'm looking for? It's dang it, god damn meth.
Together.
God damn meth.
It'll come to you later.
yeah. As I'm sleeping tonight, I'll pop up in the middle of that. It was this.
Yeah.
I'll have to shoot you a text.
I understand what you're saying. I'm picking it up telepathically.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's the whole way that at least American society deals with the problem is actually helping to make the problem worse, because it doesn't help at all. Isolating people and shaming them and making them feel bad about themselves. All that does is make people want to go out and use more, because I would use it as an excuse. Like every time I would do something and make somebody or hurt somebody or do something wrong or feel bad, it was just like an auto response, and it was already like a built-in excuse and a mechanism for me to go, oh, well, might as well go use, might as well go get high.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
I feel like shit about myself. I'm a piece of junk. I can't do anything right. Might as well be high.
Yeah. And it's such a tragedy that our prisons are full of people who are actually sick, and they need health care. They need care. They need compassionate care. They don't need to be further traumatized and punished because they're sick. And so what we're doing is just re-traumatizing these sick people and then setting them back out again on the street. And, it's just compounding the problem.
Yeah, it's like you said. I mean, the problem is so big. Sometimes you start thinking about how you can help and how you can fix it, and it's so overwhelming. You're like, where do I start?
Yeah, but it just starts with one person, right? And it just starts with planting that one seed of hope, and great things grow from little seeds.
Absolutely, absolutely, good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, so what else do we want to talk about here? So we got to the holistic stuff. We got to your story. All right, give me a second here. Like I said, good thing for editing, because all this,
I was going to say that.
all my stumblings get edited out.
That's awesome.
All the ums go away. Your ums are going to go too.
Great. Nobody will recognize me.
The first time somebody edited one of my interviews that I was on someone else's podcast, I heard it and I'm like, oh my God, I sounded amazing. And then I'm like, I've never sounded that way before. And so I had actually recorded it myself, and I went back and listened to my recording, and I'm like, oh, okay, this guy just edited out all my dumb shit.
Sweet.
I'm like, hey, can you come hang out with me all the time and just edit as it
comes out?
Yeah, edit me as it comes out so I can sound amazing all the time. So we're at about 40 minutes. Is there anything else that you want to share about what you're doing, or anything that you want to talk about in general?
I'd probably like to add that people are welcome to join my free Facebook group, North Star Recovery, and I teach a weekly meditation in there and just some holistic recovery ideas and practices that people can try. Anyone's welcome to join.
Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, at the end, you can plug any of your social media that you want to, and then shoot me that in the email. I'll throw that in the show notes. Everything that you want to have out there, I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Okay.
So people can just slide on down there and click, and there you go. They're right to you.
Thank you.
So one thing I wanted to mention real quick is that, you were talking about all the stuff that we are that's coming at us all the time. That's traumatic as far as like information, media, all of this stuff. And I recently started listening to, well, actually I interviewed this guy who's an investigative journalist, and he reports on stuff that's not being reported out there. Like mainstream media is not picking up some of these atrocities that are happening across the world, like in Sudan and Syria, Africa, all these different places. And like, I've disconnected from mainstream media altogether. Like, I don't watch the news anymore. I don't listen to anything that's, like, in my mind is poisonous, because I mean, not only do we have to watch what we put into our bodies, we have to watch what we bring into our ears, what we listen to, because that has
absolutely
that has a very profound impact on how we think. There's too many things out there today that are vying for our attention and
polluting our souls.
Yeah, correct. And keeping us from vibrating at the what I don't even know how to, I know what it means, but I don't know how to say it.
A higher frequency.
That keeps us from vibrating at that higher frequency that we need to be, because I mean, at the end of the day, we're all connected. We're connected to everything around us. And I think that's why when we go to the nature and we spend time away from our devices and, just put all that down, the feeling that you get, and I do this once a year, and I'm about to leave again for 4 days and do that exact same thing, or I just bring my dog and me and my dad go up to the mountains, and like so far up where you can only get there with a 4-wheel drive. So there's not a whole lot of people up there. And
wow, good for you.
Yeah. And just disconnect from everything, reset, figure out what the problems are. What am I still facing? What do I need to change? Where am I? It's almost like a halftime reset,
Mm-hmm. And you just reestablish that connection with your higher power, whatever that higher power is to you. But I think when you're free of distraction, you can really open the channel and receive, these inspirations, ideas that you can't get when you're being inundated by everything.
And where I was going with the investigative journalist, because I went there and then I skipped over into somewhere else. I do that quite a bit too. Just saying. So yeah, I've been listening to his podcast, and I mean, some of these stories, like I work in construction, and it's crazy. Like I'll be just sitting there listening to it in my earphones, and all of a sudden I'll just like tears will start streaming down my face, because, the story is just so horrific. And then I just start thinking, it's like, God, man, how can people be so cruel? To just like in third world countries, it's like people they have no value for life whatsoever. Yeah.
It even happens in our country. I recently spent time on downtown East Side in Vancouver here, in BC, and it's an area of the city that's just inundated with homeless people and addiction. And it's so disturbing to me that I live in a so-called free country as Canada, and we're allowing our people to just die in the street without housing, without medical care, without even bathrooms or running water. Like it's Canada, man. Like, where's the value for human life? These are all somebody's, children and mothers and fathers, and we're just, because they're drug addicts, they're just left to die in filth, and it's so heartbreaking. It's just so heartbreaking.
Yeah, we have a huge problem with that down here too. And I tried to reach out. There's a guy who I pass every day, and he lives at the bus stop, and I tried to reach out to him and get him to tell me his story, but sometimes they just don't. I don't know what it is. They don't want the help, or they don't they think it's something else. I don't know what it was. And so I just sort of like, all right, well, I'm not going to force you, but if you ever want to tell your story, cause I think that, so my thing with the homeless problem is I think that there's different levels. And when we here in California, when I think of a homeless person before now, I would just think of the ones that I would see in San Francisco that were, obviously had mental health issues. They're yelling at paper machine or, newspaper machines. They're yelling at other inanimate objects in the street, people, whatever it is. And that's what we see. And that's what most people see. And I think the majority of the homeless people that are out there are the ones that you don't see. And those are the people that just, they were one catastrophe or one financial thing away from homelessness. And that one thing happened. Let's say, I don't know, man. There's a huge problem, and I don't know how to tackle it. And I do want to try and tackle it because I do have a platform. And I think that the more that we put a face on homelessness and this issue, that it's not just crazy people. It's not just drug addicts. I mean, it's everyday people like me and you that could just, have one, let's just say our car blew up. And now that was our only form of transportation. We don't have any family to help us. We don't have anything. It was just us. And that car was everything. And now I don't have it. Yeah. And that was the last straw that made you homeless.
Yeah. Or you see moms and children out on the street because it was either that or live with a violent partner, right? So, because there's no place for them to go. So they either have to live with the abuse or live on the street. And no person should have to choose that, right?
Yeah, it's
not right.
No, that's a shitty choice. You know what I mean? Those what choices are those? Those aren't good choices.
No.
No,
it's sad.
And being a guy that was abusive, not physically, but verbally and mentally and all of those things, I've taken a lot in my life, and this is my way of giving back and trying to make up for all of the, things that I've done and things that I've put other people through and relationships and what it's like, the wake that you leave behind you and with the destructive behavior and everything that's associated with addiction and that life.
Yes, absolutely. Just the process of facing that, the wreckage you've left, and trying to make amends is enough to send a person into relapse. Like, it's a lot, right? To face yourself and what you've done, not just to yourself, but to other people who love you. It's a lot to face up to, but it's so incredibly important for our healing and for our loved ones' healings too. So I really commend you for that. I really commend you for owning that and for wanting to make that right.
No. Thank you for being somebody who is willing to tell your truth and able and I'm able to feel through you some of the things that I've done that weren't right. And, it's the fact that we're able to communicate to each other and put that out there and still have respect for one another, knowing that, I could have been that guy that was that way to you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, that was a big step in my healing too, was to find forgiveness for my partner and to also own my part in it. That was a really big, felt like I was growing up when I was able to say, yes, I was abused and I forgive you for abusing me, but can I forgive myself for putting myself in that situation? And what was it in me that felt like that was all I was worthy of, So really, I think forgiving myself was even harder than forgiving him, but it was I really needed to do that for my healing.
Well, that's awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on and being as honest and open as you have been. I got 2 more questions for you, and then we'll wrap this up.
Okay.
One is one book that you would recommend for anybody that's helped you change your life. I know that's a tough one.
My attention span is like a mosquito.
It could be an ebook too, or an audiobook.
Well, I really love the big book. hate to be so, ordinary.
The Bible or
I
the
like
NA?
the big book. Hey?
The Bible or NA big book?
NA, the NA big book, because it came in it comes in short little stories, right? Oh, you know what? I like that book One Day at a Time. That's my favorite. It just gives me a real sort of morning focus, and it's nice and short, and it's really good to start my day with that sort of meditation and that idea that I'm carrying throughout the day. I would really recommend that to people. Keep it simple.
I remember those books.
Yeah.
I used to have to start every day with those in groups. One of the 18 institutions that I was in.
That's funny. I think, and my first big book I actually stole from a treatment center. I should probably give it back.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right, next one has to do with podcasts. I don't know. Are you a podcast consumer? Do you listen to them much, or are you just starting to get into it?
I've just started getting into it, actually. I really like your podcast and what you're doing here, so I'll be a regular listener.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that just about does it. So, I mean, if you want to plug any of your social media or anything else, if you want to replug that group again one more time, wouldn't hurt.
Okay. You want me just to say it now, or you mean an email?
No, you can say it now too. Like if you got an Instagram or anything, any kind of social media that you want to plug, or anything that you want to put out there where people can get a hold of you if this resonates with them. Your coaching business, get a plug out there for that. If anybody's interested in learning more about holistic healing.
Okay. I'm so technologically challenged that I don't have an Instagram. I might be the only person I know that doesn't. But people are welcome to join my free Facebook group. It's called North Star Recovery, and I teach meditation in there once a week, and different teachings about holistic recovery that people might want to try. And I do holistic recovery coaching one-on-one. I work individually with people who are in recovery or who are seeking to find joy again in their recovery, where their recovery has just kind of become joyless and work or just, I don't know what the word is, blank there. Yeah. Shit, I wrecked the plug.
That's okay. Looks like we're suffering from the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll shoot you an email too.
Yeah. So listeners out there, you can find all of the places where you can find Satya on the show notes. And with that, we're done. And I'd like to
thank you so much.
Oh yeah. You're welcome, man. Thank you. It was a wonderful conversation, and hopefully we can have another one at some point down the road.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, Satya. Have a good night.
Okay, take care, Sean. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the show, and thank you to Satya. Man, that was a great story. Horrible circumstances, but man, how you managed to navigate your life from where you were, it's amazing. That methamphetamine is some wicked shit. The fact that, it literally took her 3 months from starting to losing everything should go to show you that, this is a powerful drug. And I don't know what the statistics are, but I know actually from personal experience that it seems to affect women way harder than it does men. Like from everything from, the physical deterioration to just how hard you fall. I mean, especially when I was doing it, in that whole running around in that whole lifestyle, it really seemed like it affected the women way harder than it did the men. And I don't know, maybe that's just me. Like I said, I don't have statistics on this. This isn't anything that's, published or that I read. This is just personal opinion from having lived it and lived in that lifestyle for a lot of years, and what should have, destroyed my teeth, should have done a whole lot of other damage to me, for the time that I used it, it didn't. So I'm one of the lucky ones. So if you want to get in touch with Satya, she's got that Facebook group, North Star Recovery. It's open to everybody who's, interested in the holistic approach to recovery. So if that sounds like something that you want to do, why don't you head on over there and hit her up. And if you want to get a hold of me, at Nowhere to Go But Up Now on Instagram, go to my bio, hit the link tree. Anywhere you want to find me, I'll be right there. If you want to email me, nowheretogobutupnow@gmail.com. If you have a story, if you have a bottom that you want to share, those are the places that you can go to contact me, and I'll put you on the show. Also, like I said in the intro, if you know somebody who may benefit from listening to this show or one of the past episodes on addiction or divorce, mental health issues, send them over. Word of mouth is always the best kind of promotion that anybody can get. Also, don't forget to rate and review if you feel so inclined and moved to do so. I could always use it. It always helps boost my ratings in iTunes or any of the other podcast platforms that I'm on out there. So the next episode will be episode 20, and I'll be talking to Corey Peterson, who is a licensed psychotherapist, and we'll be talking about self-sabotage. And I chose that topic because it's something that in the past I have done quite a bit of. You know, when things are going good, you know, when you grow up in chaos, when things are going good, for myself, I tend to self-sabotage and create chaos to replicate what I'm used to. It's funny, I tend to do better in situations where I don't necessarily know that I do better, but it seems that when I'm under the gun and I have no other choice and I'm down to the wire, that's when I get the best results, or I have gotten some of the best results in my life and things that I've been trying to do. But with that being said, it's definitely not the best way to approach things. So nowadays, I tend to take a more organized approach to things and try to get a more organized way of doing stuff, and so I'm not flying by the seat of my pants all the time. Not sure if that makes sense. It makes sense in my head. Anyways, so that's all I got for this episode. Until next time, keep it 100, stay true to yourself. Everything else is just noise.